We're here to share our experience about what has worked for us and embracing that authentic self despite past trauma, self doubt, and limiting beliefs. Today we have Robin Berning here with us. Robin, thank you so much for being
Hey.
here.
Oh, thanks for asking me. I feel excited.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I love talking about our personal stories. One thing that I love is as I've gotten older, I just have really achieved a whole different perspective of looking at my 20-year-old self versus my 30-year-old self and my 40-year-old self. How has your perspective changed as you've grown older about revealing your authentic self?
Yeah, it's funny when you are talking about that and asking that question, and people are like, "Oh, I wish I was 20 again." And I was like, "I don't.
Right?
I really don't wish I was 20 again." Yeah, I had a lot of insecurities. I questioned everything. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt very lost and never really felt like I connected or belonged, which was
Mhm.
very surprising because I found that later in life is that, if I had some relationships with people and like if I was moving, for example, in my 30s, I moved and I had so many people come out of the woodworks and say, "Oh, you were such an influence and I'm so grateful to know you and you really helped me." And it was such an interesting perspective because at that time in my life, I was very insecure and felt very insignificant and didn't feel like I made any kind of impact on people. But that's how I felt. Right. But as I've come into my 40s and now into my 50s, I'm very comfortable with who I am. I'm very comfortable if somebody is not comfortable with who I am.
That's a huge step to go. I get to be who I am. And if you like it, that's awesome. And if you don't, that's okay. I'll be over here.
Exactly. Yes. And I was never like that before. I was very much the people pleaser. I wanted everybody to like me. If you didn't like me, there was something wrong with me, and that kind of ruled my direction. And that was kind of my compass was trying to please everybody else so that I would fit in and be liked.
How well did that work for you?
It did not. It was very depleting to the point where I didn't have a choice to make a change, right?
Was there a
Um,
point in your life where you got confronted with something internally that you're like, I have to make a change then?
yeah, my very profound point was my rock bottom in alcoholism. I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for 15 years now, but it was that pivotal moment that I was like, I was so depleted. And I wasn't like a homeless, lost everything alcoholic. I was emotionally tapped out.
If
Yeah,
you don't mind
yeah.
just filling in the story a little bit about where you were in life and maybe what had gotten you to that point.
Yeah, I think from a very, very early age, and I hear this from a lot of alcoholics, is that, that not feeling like you fit in piece and being overwhelmed a lot. And it's been my experience in kind of the work that I do has made me more aware of it. And that is that everybody has some level of empath that they are. And a lot of us at a very young age, if we're a highly sensitive empath and we don't even know what that is, how do we manage that? Right. And so for
Mhm.
me, I am a highly sensitive empath. And so I would feel other people's feelings. I would feel the stress of things. I could feel physically other people's physical things. And by the way, a lot of empaths fall into that people pleasing also, right? Because we kind of conform to what other people are.
Well,
Um,
for me, it's like immediately what is a memory in my head is like when you're talking to somebody and you're not doing what they want or living up to their expectation, or in my case, like my mom just had a fear for me, you feel their pain, like their
yeah,
pain of whatever it is they want you to do. It's because they're in pain in some level. And now you're tapping into their pain by not fulfilling your own desire or following your own inspiration. So it's almost like putting a quick band-aid on it. It's not a healthy band-aid because but it's like,
right.
boy, if I can make her feel better, I'm going to feel better for a second.
Yeah.
But that's a short-term solution.
Yeah,
versus
in the people pleasing category, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. In the alcoholism category, it's I'm gonna numb away the feelings because I can't
Mm.
explain them. Because a lot of times it was a I can't explain why I'm so anxious or stressed or whatever, because I personally didn't have something going on that should have stressed me out, but all of a sudden I would feel this angst and I didn't know how to anyway, so the alcoholism piece, that is kind of where that came in.
But I think what you're sharing is really important because, like you said, you were feeling things that you couldn't understand. You couldn't even maybe even relate to, but you were feeling with them, right? And boy, if you have an emotion like stress and you're looking around going, well, I'm not really stressed and yet I'm stressed, how do you resolve that? You don't know what to do with it.
Right. Absolutely, which is why I drank. Yeah, so that is what took me into the drinking piece. As I moved into my marriage, that people pleasing piece became you don't want confrontation. So rather than what you think will be an argument or confrontation, you're just like, fine, we'll just do that. Fine. And so there was all this like constant people pleasing to the point where I lost who I was. I just became something else. And I
Mhm.
remember I would always think if I just get to the next thing, then I'll be happy. Before I met my husband, it was like, well, when I get married, then I'll be happy. And then I hadn't gone to college yet. And so then I was like, well, I'll go to college. And once I get my degree, then I'll know and I'll be happy. And then, well, then once I have kids, and once I have this, and once I have that. And then I remember this one time we were at the country club, champagne brunch. My minivan in the parking lot I could see, and my boys playing on the green I could see, and I'm dripping in jewelry, and I'm sitting there with everything that I thought would make me happy, and I was not happy. And I was thinking, what is wrong with me?
Did
What is
everybody
wrong?
outside of you think you were happy?
Yeah, because I put on the front that I was,
Right.
but inside I was missing something, and it was me. I was missing me.
You could be the only one aware of that, right?
Right, but I didn't even know who me was at that
Yeah.
point. My alcoholic rock bottom actually came when we moved to North Carolina because we thought things down here would be better. And still, my husband and I were not getting along. And I took a job that ended up being a very, very, very toxic environment. And that just catapulted me straight down to the bottom, and I was not happy in my marriage, and I was miserable at the job, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I just remember it was starting to emotionally affect my children, and that's what did it for me. My son, it was his first day of kindergarten, and my husband and I had gotten in a huge fight the night before. I woke up the next morning to put my son on the bus for kindergarten, and I was still drunk. And
Mm.
I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. So then we started the process of going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I told my husband that I wanted to leave him, and he really wanted to try and make it work. And he was like, just tell me what you want. Tell me what would make you happy. And honestly, Michael, I could not answer that question.
Wow.
I really did not know what I wanted. I didn't know what would make me happy because I'd spent my whole life trying to please everybody else, that it really was my beginning of my self-discovery. And it started in Alcoholics Anonymous. A lot of people think it's either a cult or it's a religious program. It's really not. It's a spiritual program, but you find your own spirituality. You find your own path. Some people are very religious, absolutely. I consider myself very spiritual. And so that's kind of where it all started. And then with that, I started dabbling in energy work.
I'm intrigued going to Alcoholics Anonymous and diving into that. I can't help but think that that had to be scary all by itself.
Two things, I definitely was ready. But the second thing is that I was not unfamiliar with the program because my father was an alcoholic in recovery my entire life.
Mm.
So I was very, very familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous from my dad.
All
So
right.
it's like I knew where to go. You
Gotcha.
know, it's funny though, well, funny, not funny. A lot of people are very hesitant to walk into the rooms of AA because they think, what if I see somebody I know? Then they're going
Mm.
to know I'm an alcoholic. But the fact of the matter is, if they're there,
They're in the same boat.
they're in the same boat. Yeah. So, yeah, but a lot of people, when we're first at that stage of going in, we're so consumed by fear and overwhelm and
That's a big shift to give up everything that you have been familiar with, even if it's painful, to do something different or about it. What came up
yeah.
for you in that time frame about making that shift or change?
I remember when I first started going, usually once you go and everyone knows you're new, they kind of surround you and you're in the middle of this beautiful herd of women for the women and men for the men.
See, that freaked me out. That would
The
freak me
women?
out. People coming around me to support me. I'm
Yeah.
one of those people, if I'm upset or crying, don't be nice to me. Don't look at me. I'm gonna go to the corner and just I'm gonna go to my closet and leave me alone. So
Yeah.
for people to gather around me and try to be supportive would absolutely freak me out.
And
But
it does. It
okay.
does for some people. Yeah, absolutely does for some people. There, especially like there's a lot of women that come into the program that have always had not good relationships with other women. And so to start to form a relationship with another woman in a loving way is very foreign. So that is not uncommon for people to go, hold up there, back off, sister. Like, I am not ready for this. But the thing with AA is it's kind of like we are here for you, but you don't have to do anything. There's no forcing of anything. It's a suggestion program. We make suggestions, we encourage, we invite, come here, do this, do that. But if you don't do it, you don't get in trouble.
And it's not to say that I think that my reaction is the best way to react. I'm just saying like
Yeah.
that's just would be honest, me being authentic. I
Yeah.
actually love that they have that kind of energy and that kind of support because it is what we need. So,
Yeah.
and for you not being familiar with the program, it seems like that is what you needed.
Yeah. And so what happened was is I got a sponsor because usually that is the suggestion is you get somebody that kind of holds your hand through the process of the 12 steps. And I just remember my husband wasn't like gung ho about going to AA because he's also an alcoholic. And that was part of the problem. We were both just like, "Ah," and I was like, that's why I wanted to leave because, in my opinion, he was the alcoholic with all the problems.
Ah,
Nothing wrong with me. It was all him. So he was like, let's try and work this out. And I said, the only way that I will even consider trying to work it out is if you quit drinking and go to AA. He wasn't on the AA bus, so to speak. And I was. So even though we weren't drinking, now we're arguing about how AA works. And I just remember my sponsor saying to me, Robin, you're not working his program, you're working your program. He gets his own sponsor, you stay out of his program. And that was a defining moment for me because it made me separate and be my own person. Whereas before, I always tried to conform and be a part of.
mhm.
And I notice now as I travel through life, and I'm a life coach now, and I coach a lot of people that sometimes are not in great relationships. And the ones that I see that are always super successful are the ones where each individual person is happy as an individual by themselves, and then they complement each other in the relationship. And that's essentially what ended up happening with my husband and me. So we are still married. We're celebrating 30 years of marriage this year.
Wow.
And I attribute it to the fact that I discovered and found myself. And so did he. We weren't reliant on each other anymore for our happiness. I make myself happy and fulfilled with my own spirituality and my higher power, my spirit team. I got a big spirit team. And he is happy on his own. But when we get together, we complement that. We don't rely on each other to fulfill ourselves. Does that make
Right,
sense?
absolutely. Going back, so you joined AA. You said it was a defining moment of really realizing that you've got to go. This is all an internal job for you.
Yes.
So it sounds like you had that aha moment. What did you do with that aha moment? Where did you go from there? How did you find yourself from there? How did you start working on yourself?
It had a little bit to do with the 12 steps because in that 12-step program, steps 1 through 5 basically help you look into your past and see what your patterns are
Mm,
and understand what your part in getting to where you were at was. Because when we get to that rock bottom place where we're miserable and we hate everybody, we blame everybody else for all of our problems,
exactly.
right? So steps 1 through 5 really helped me understand that I was a people pleaser with control issues, which is very conflicting.
So when you start letting go of that internal judgment and you start observing the self reflection of your own stuff, then you start stepping into compassion. Did that happen for you?
Yes, absolutely. Compassion for myself,
It's got to
you
start
know,
there.
it's always got to start there. The healing really is very internal first. And then as you start to get comfortable in that, or as I started to get comfortable in that and understanding what my patterns were, how I got to where I was not standing in my truth, all the things. There's these phases that occur. And this goes back to kind of what you were talking about in each decade as we age, that I really felt that because at first it was all about like learning how to stand in my power, even when it was uncomfortable. Right. And then now it's like I can fully stand in my power and be totally comfortable when we're out and about in this three-dimensional world that we live in. There's a lot of people out there doing really offensive things to other people, whether it's because of cultural conflict or societal conflict or just whatever. But we can look at them now and kind of see the unhealed person for
Mm,
what it is. Like I can look at somebody who's being what other people would say, man, they're being a jerk. And I could say that too, like they're being a jerk. And then I notice it's a judgment. And then I can still look at that person and go, hmm. And I think Oprah has a book out right now, something like What Happened to You,
mm,
and it kind of talks about that. Like we all respond and react with what we've learned as we grow up. So if they've grown up in this unhealthy environment, then they react to the world in unhealthy ways. I can see that now as an observer. And I think you had mentioned the word being observing. That's very much how I am now. I move through the world as an observer of myself first and others. As soon as I have a judgment thought, I'm like, oh, that's a judgment. Okay. And then I back it up and I do what I call zooming up. And I look up here and I see that person as somebody who's on their own journey, discovering themselves or trying to heal something or not, and still in that chaotic place. And the best I can do is just be myself. In AA, we have this thing called attraction, not promotion. Like we don't promote the program of AA, we just show up as ourselves. I've had friends that I've told I'm in the program, and just because I do, a lot of people like to stay anonymous. I don't care. I'm
yeah, you've
open about what.
always been very open about
And because of that, I've had quite a few people through the years reach out to me at different times and say, I really need some help. And some of them were shockers, like, what, really? Like, I had no idea. So yeah, it's very different now than it was 15, it'll be 16 years in August
Well,
that I'm.
congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
And I love what you were talking about earlier about how you embraced who you were. Like you had to walk through something that presented itself in your life that said, all right, you can either stand up and be your authentic self, or you can keep on doing it the old way. What's your choice? Can you share a memory of having to do that and what it was like for you?
It was interesting because as I was moving through my family stuff and working my program of AA and then getting into the spirituality piece of energy work and stuff like that. I was able to kind of stand up in that with my family. When I first opened my business, I was a full service salon and spa. I had employees and I had to hire people and I had customers that maybe weren't my direct customers. It just provided this whole other opportunity for me to practice all of that, which was really hard. It was really, really hard because you want to be perfect, right? We have this other saying in AA, progress, not perfection. That was absolutely a mantra of mine for a while, especially when I first started opening the business because I didn't know what I was doing. I was scared to death, but I walked through a lot of fear. And some of the shift that I talk about is when early on there was a lot of fear and overwhelm, and I lived on trust. I just trusted, right? I would trust that something was going to work out. And then that trust shifted into faith, and faith was a little more comfortable. There was still an element of fear in faith. And now I move through life with just a knowingness.
I really believe in our heart we want that. But it's that brain that questions everything. Like, can you really
Mhm.
trust this? Are you sure you should trust this? Comes up with all those questions. It's about quieting that brain and to give it evidence that if we trust long enough, then we can get to faith. See, we can have faith because it's always worked out. You can talk back to that brain going, look, it's always worked out. So we can be in faith. And
Yep,
then if you've done it long enough, that brain finally will settle down and quit questioning it and you go into the knowingness. Does that resonate with you? I mean, that's certainly the way it is for
absolutely.
me.
Absolutely, yeah, because the more you walk through the fear, you realize that once you get to the other side, it was like, "Oh my gosh, I survived this." And then when I got to that faith piece, it's kinda like what you said, when something presented itself and all of a sudden I start to go to fear, I'd be like, "But wait, that other situation was like 10 times worse and I totally survived it. So I can get through this too." There's things that I do even today. I'm so grateful for my spirit team. I thank them every single day, like at least 20 times, because there's things that I do today that used to paralyze me that I don't even think twice about now.
Do you
And
mind
now
sharing? This gets back to if other people have experienced that fear, what it was like for you.
I know when I first opened my business to interview somebody, I was terrified just to interview somebody. I had like imposter syndrome or something.
Mhm.
And so for somebody to come in and talk to me, or like I did a lot of renovations around the building. And so I would have to have contractors come in and I would have to like get bids. For some reason, I was so terrified that they would think that I was a fraud or something. It just made me so uncomfortable to be that empowered woman who could say, you know what, you're not the right guy for me. I'm getting three bids, I'm, whatever. And now I don't even think twice about that. If I need something, I'll literally call them up and say, hey, I'm getting three bids. Whoever comes in at the right price with the right energy for me. But I was so terrified around that, or just interacting with other people, or when new customers would come, just being like, oh my gosh, am I going to be good enough for them? And now
Mhm.
I have a customer that comes in and I might just say, you know what? I'm not the right person for you. I think you should go see Michael. You know what I mean? I'm very comfortable now if I'm not the right person for somebody to tell them I'm not the right person for you.
Would you have been able to get to this point without walking through the fear?
No. I would not have been able, no, I needed to walk through the fear. Honestly, the fear for me, I'm sure you've heard that acronym, false evidence appearing real. Fear to me is something you make up in your head. You live all these situations and circumstances in your head that give you that emotion. And then nine times out of 10, none of those things ever even really happen, but you still live them in your energy body. That's
Yeah.
why I don't even subscribe to that kind of stuff anymore. When COVID hit and they told us we had to close down and all the things, don't get me wrong, I had my freak out moment. I freaked out for maybe 24 hours. And then I was like, drop into my serenity prayer. Ain't nothing I can do about it. The governor is shutting down the whole state. It's not just me, like everybody. So I'm going to figure it out. But in the meantime, what's my opportunity? And at the time, I was finishing up my feng shui certification and my advanced life coaching certification. At the time, I was signed up for the 6 month program or whatever. And now I'm like, well, shoot, I have all this time on my hand now. I'm just going to bump right up to the intensive. And so I just made use of all that time. And then some of my customers would say to me, they're like, well, Robin, what are you going to do if your business doesn't survive? And I said, what do you mean? And they go, what if you don't make it? I'm like, that's not even a thought in my mind. Like, it's just not a thought in my mind. I'm just doing what I can do right now. I'm doing all the things to set myself up for what the next thing is. I just looked at the opportunities and I just kept putting one foot forward instead of moving backwards or going into fear, because fear or worry is like praying for something you don't want. It's that
Mhm.
manifesting from that negative low vibration energy, which then creates more fear and draws in the stuff that you don't want. So
Yeah.
I just kept my high vibes. I would do my meditations. I'd walk with a friend, like Keegan and I would go walking, and then my friend Sue and I would go walking, and we would strategize. What's the next thing on the plate, or how are we going to do this? I think that's when Keegan did his coaching certification too.
Mhm. Very
Yeah.
nice. So, you mentioned your spiritual team. You got a great spiritual team. How have you connected with them? How have you built that relationship with them?
I'm certified in an archangel certification course. I had always wanted to do the archangelic light energy, but I felt like if I did that certification, because that's just like a weekend certification, right? And I felt like if I would have done that, I would have been an imposter syndrome, a fraud, right? Because I didn't really know any of the angels. And so I ended up taking a year-long course that was an archangel study course where I spent like 3 weeks to a month with each individual angel, and I'd study them and meditate with them and do that kind of stuff, connect with their stones and all of that. And so that's really, I think, what started me feeling like I had a relationship with more than just my higher power.
Mm,
Yeah. And then I started feeling other things come in, different elementals and ascended masters. And so I just started intentionally spending more time connecting with the energies of Kuan Yin or Mary Magdalene or and Jesus even, because like holy cow, Jesus was a big trigger for me and he is for a lot of people.
yep.
You just say the name and I'm like, I'm out. Don't want any part of it.
We throw him into the whole organized religion realm, and yet he's an amazing ascended master.
Absolutely. I developed my relationship with him through Mary Magdalene.
Mhm.
You know, it was her loving energy that really brought me around into that because she's basically like the female version of him. So that's really what kind of opened me up. And even still, when I was like a full blown, like rah rah Mary Magdalene chick, you mentioned Jesus and I felt a little tightening in my chest. And it was just like, what is going on with this? And then I needed to explore that a little bit. Now I'm very comfortable and talk to him and call him in, or if he pops in or shows up.
I think there's a lot of truth in what you say, as we tend to sometimes get into working with an ascended master or an angel or whatever it is, and we're all gung ho about that one. We're all just like, this is everything and the be all. But then you start to relax, and then you find that there's others. It's like not just one. You start accessing one, it really opens the door to so many others, elementals or angels. And obviously, I work with dragons, which is an elemental. Once you've opened that door and you've built the communication, once you open up to other possibilities, there's so many that are willing to work with you.
Absolutely. They're lined
Yeah.
up.
They're lined up. You just have to be communicating. I always tell everyone, you just need to build the communication. You have to build a relationship just like you would with a friend. If you don't call a friend, if you aren't consistent in that connection, there's not a real friendship necessarily. The friendship can't really build and strengthen. And that's the truth with your spiritual team also. You have to
Yeah.
show up and ask them, even if it's just giving them a to-do list. I do that all the time. Guys, I don't have time for this. You guys go take care of that. That's their whole mission, is to help us in this human experience.
I would
Yeah.
say if they said, I don't want to tell them what to do, I would say, well, you're not telling them what to do. You're thanking them for doing something for you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for taking that out. I tell you, just like I say to my kids, thanks for taking out the trash before they've done it, right?
It's just the intention and your gratitude there all in one. I love it.
Absolutely. I'm finding myself more and more with the daily stuff too, because I'm in another angel certification now because I found this other guy that I really like to follow. I like his community a lot, and he has different angels and different ascended masters. So I'm starting on this program, but he really sparked me into like every single thing now. I was out with a friend of mine and my earring fell out because I was putting something on and my earring like shot out and we're in this parking lot. I just remember in one of the lessons when they're like, you can ask Archangel whoever. I don't even remember which one it was. And see, that's the thing too, is like sometimes you don't have to know which one to ask for.
Oh,
But so we're like looking, and we can't find it. And I was like, you know what? It's a cheap earring anyway. I was like, I really don't care if we find it. And then I thought, hey, angels, can you help us find this? And literally 2 seconds later, Lisa goes, there it is. It's like she literally saw it right when I said, angels, can you please help us find the earring? Boom, she saw it.
I love how far you've come in your journey. I mean, really from such lows. And so, what is your high now? Where have you found strength?
My high actually is just serenity. That peaceful, that being able to have a quiet mind at least once a day. I just have this overwhelming feeling of gratitude where my heart just wants to burst wide open. Remember how I said earlier when I was like, well, I just get to this next place, then I'll be happy. I just get to that next place, or I just get this next shiny thing. I was always looking for something external to fulfill me. Now, even if it's Mother's Day or Christmas and my family's like, what do you want? And I'm like, I I don't really, I like literally have to look. This is where it really like just makes my heart want to explode. Is my three kids are pretty much the same way now. I will ask them, like, your birthday is coming. What do you want? I don't really need anything. And I'm like, no. You know? Or like when a situation arises, because, they're young, they're in their 20s, they're in
Mm.
that place that I did not like. And they can come and talk to me about something. They can come and let me know. Like when my daughter's anxiety starts to amp up, she'll tell me, Mom, I'm getting overstimulated. I need to whatever. Like she's got the tools. So I'm just like elated with knowing that, again, that attraction piece. They see it in me and they see
Mhm.
that I can still have that peace within the storm that everybody talks about. And they come to me for counsel. I watch so many of my clients and my friends struggle with their teenagers and their young adult children. And we just don't have that in our family. All through COVID, all five of us were living in the house together through COVID. There was not one argument,
That's
not
beautiful.
one. Nobody got on each other's nerves. We all worked together. We all pitched in. It was very peaceful. We just have a very calm house, and it just was never like that early on. It was very chaotic and stressful and all the things.
You value what you've achieved.
I really, really do. Often people come around me and they're like, Robin, I don't know what it is, but just being around you, I feel calmer. And I feel that is that entrainment piece
Mhm.
because I live in this place of just high vibration but calm energy, and people feel that around me, and that makes me feel good, makes me happy.
So, what does authenticity mean to you?
Authenticity for me is being able to be honest with myself first and then with others. So sometimes I really have to check in with that. If somebody asks me to do something, my automatic people pleaser will want to say yes, right? But unless it's an absolute resounding yes, like in my body, I feel 100% I want to do it, then I have to say, let me think about it. And
Mhm.
then I think about it, and then really being honest with myself first. And then I can really be honest with other people.
I love that. What do
Yeah.
you feel is your one guiding truth?
That love is the highest of all.
Mhm. What does love
Yeah.
mean to you? How do you define love?
That's a good question. Definitely no judgment because love is love. There's no judgment there. I'll admit I still have judgment sometimes and then I'll catch myself. But love, I don't know. That's hard to articulate. I would say really the non judgment piece is my first indicator on whether or not I'm looking through the eyes of love.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
don't know how to articulate past that. That's a good question.
I always move into it's like an unconditional acceptance. Like you can
Mhm.
be whatever you want and it's unconditionally accepted and
Yeah,
in fact approved. It's like good for you for letting that light shine that is uniquely yours and the love, the unconditional acceptance supports that and enhances it. It wants that to shine.
yeah,
Yeah, very cool.
yeah,
So go ahead and Robin, share what you offer. I know you do a lot of different modalities. Where are you in your practice and what do you offer others?
yeah. So I'm a master certified classical feng shui consultant, and classical feng shui is very different than what's modernly practiced, which you've had a little experience with that. It's a lot more detail oriented in your specific home and space. And then I'm also an advanced certified life and spiritual life coach. And I do Reiki and cranial sacral therapy for somatic emotional release.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. And we will put Robin's contact information within the description below. I'm so thankful and grateful that you came and joined us today, Robin. Yeah, no, it was beautiful. I mean, you had such a beautiful story, and what a beautiful way to just expand in your life and live it in such peace after such chaos in your younger
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. I love it. It's a very, very good life. Life is good.
Beautiful. And that's what it should be for everyone.
I know. It
Yeah.
can be. It can be. You just need to decide.
You have to decide to walk through the fear sometimes. I think that's probably the biggest challenge for everyone, which is why I love talking about fear here. How did you do it? How did you walk through that fear and to see the outcome? So you're an inspiration to help others do it also.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to come to a close. Namaste. Our main goal at Quantum Life is that we will assist you through your healing and spiritual awakening. We are here to help you feel at home in this new age. But Quantum Life is more than just a store, it's a community.